Well, good morning, everybody. Friday the 13th. How about that? Hope it's a good day for everybody. Happy U.S. Open week and Father's Day weekend. Happy Father's Day to all the dads out there, and hope you all enjoy watching the Open and seeing some of the best players in the world struggle with that rough. It's pretty incredible, but should be some exciting golf to watch this weekend. So thanks for joining us. This is our last chat before that PDR deadline on Sunday. So if you haven't gotten your credits in, I know this will help you out. For those of you that don't know, my name is Nikki Gatch. I serve as the Executive Director of the Southern California PGA, and on behalf of our president, Allison Kurt, as well as our colleagues from the Northern California section, President Nick Bailey and Executive Director Caitlin Doyle, we welcome you to the California Nevada Chat. Caitlin, any opening comments?
Yeah, morning everyone. Thank you, Nikki. Yeah, just a big hello to everyone. Thanks for hopping on. Hopefully the PDR cycle, you're getting close to finishing. So I know everyone's very busy at their facilities, so keep up the great work. We're nearing 4th of July, and I know that there's a lot going on for everyone at their clubs. So just keep up the great work, and we're excited for today's chat with Mike and Craig. So thanks for being here.
Awesome, thank you. So our guest today is Mike O'Donnell. Mike is with the PGA of America. He serves as the Senior Director of Member and Section Operations. Mike has been with the PGA for close to a year and a half, I believe. Mike is a master PGA professional. He's held a variety of positions. I don't want to go through his entire story because I want him to share that with you, but you'll hear he's got just a great background in golf operations, serving at all different types of green grass facilities, from private, public, resort, military. He's had a great career, and we're thrilled that he was able to join the PGA of America in his current role. Caitlin and I work with Mike very closely and his team at headquarters. So Mike, welcome. Thanks for joining us. It's great to see you. And thanks for joining us from home quarters in Frisco.
Thanks, Nikki, Caitlin. Great to join you. Look forward to spending a little time with your membership this morning, and hopefully there's more than normal on the call, closing out those PDR credits, because that's obviously an important time of year. Nikki, thanks for the brief intro there, and like for the group, I'll give just a little bit of a rundown, maybe on my background, and then sort of share my role here at home quarters with the PGA team. And then kind of maybe share some of those impacts that we have in close collaboration with sections, and then turn it over to any questions that you may all have. But Nikki touched on it briefly. I've had a 27-year career as a member with the PGA of America, and for me it started. I grew up in England. My father was a U.S. service member with the Air Force. I was born here in Texas, Sherman, just down the road, funnily enough. So it's kind of full circle to be back here at home quarters in Frisco. But my father, when he retired from the military, got into the golf business, and he took me to the PGA show way back in the day, in the early 90s. And I played a lot during sort of middle and high school, loved the game, as many of us have, and probably still do. And I was going to go down the road of getting into the banking industry, but it wasn't for me. An internship there early on made me realize that wasn't the path forward. And my dad's encouragement over the years took me to the PGA show back in gosh, I would have said it's probably 1990. And at the show, I was very fortunate to meet one of your legendary PGA professionals in Northern California, Ken Morton Sr. And Ken, through a kind of series of conversations, kind of opened my eyes to the opportunity of leaving the UK and getting into the golf business. So I started at Hagen Oaks Golf Complex back in '91, working at the Red and Blue for the Morton family with Ken, and Kenny Jr. was there. Tommy was there, and Mike Woods, and several of the team, and that kind of began my love of the game as far as getting into it as a career. Ken encouraged me to get into the PGA side of the business, and I did. I passed my PAT in 1992, 27 April at Lake Ridge Golf Country Club, I think it is, in Reno, Nevada. So a lot of connections here, and had my apprenticeship card in Northern Cal all those years ago. And anyway, to sort of run through without belaboring the story, that set me on my path, and I was able to go from Hagen Oaks back to Europe, spent a couple of years in England, and got into the military side of golf again through my father's influence. And I spent 5 years in Germany with the Department of Defense at Ramstein Air Force Base at Woodlawn Golf Course. And that's where I was really able to sort of go through some of those sort of echelon, as many of you have, from an apprentice sort of to the first assistant, became a member there during that time, director of instruction, head professional, and was there through sort of the mid-late 90s. Then had an opportunity to come back stateside, had an opportunity in the director of golf position here in Texas, at Wind Creek, up in the Wichita Falls area. And then just sort of began a sort of a journey of going back and forth really between Europe and the US. Opportunities presented themselves. Went back to Germany for a few years, to the Heidelberg area. At this point, again, it was sort of in that director of golf and then general manager position there. And that led to an opportunity with the Department of Defense that was sort of beyond golf, but still allowed me to kind of have a very close sort of handle on the golf operation there as well, but helped the military community there with childcare, some of their preventative health programs, community service programs, recreational, everything from sort of, I would say, at some point we got into doing whitewater rafting and ice climbing and fitness programs, swimming programs, recreational shooting, you name it, to include golf and all the food and beverage, catering, special event operations for a large community there. And our like collective team's responsibility was ensuring the readiness of those service members and their families. And it was a wonderful opportunity. And I spent many years in that space, but actually had an opportunity through one of our German members at the co-use club we had to take a stint with him in the south of France. And I worked for the Four Seasons there for 5 years at a resort called Terre Blanche. Those of you that may be familiar with that area, it was in the Provence, sort of Côte d'Azur, 36-hole course. It was resort initially, and I was brought in to sort of help sort of privatize one of the 18 holes and help with that resident population. So had an incredible opportunity there for 5 years, and that led to an opportunity to come back to the US again with the Department of Defense. Spent 12 years in Colorado in a similar role that I'd had in Heidelberg. The title was the Director of Family, Morale, Welfare, and Recreation, but it was in general similar terms, taking care of our service members' families, specifically their children. We took care of about 1,500 children a day in our childcare programs, and then we took care of preventative health and education programs, helping service members with those milestone opportunities and like life-changing Kairos moments, from sort of buying a home to getting married, to sometimes getting divorced, to deploying, to coming back from deployment, having children, and everything in between, and some of the much harder topics around substance abuse, domestic violence, and how to help provide those preventative programs, how to really lean into preventative on the suicidal ideation side, together with those recreation programs too. And again, recreational sort of shooting and ice climbing and skiing and whitewater rafting trips on the quality of life perspective, to include golf. We had a wonderful golf course there, Cheyenne Shadows, and the mission for our team was just to ensure that those service members were ready to deploy at a moment's notice. And by ready, they were emotionally, physically, sort of socially in a good space, so that when they were called up to deploy, they knew they could, and they could focus on the mission wherever they were at, knowing that we were taking care of their families back at sort of their home installation. So wonderful opportunity there. And at that time, I was able to serve on the board. And it was the first time I'd been involved in section board service. Spent 7 years with the Colorado PGA on the board, and most recently there, prior to coming here to home quarters, served as the vice president for the section. And it really opened my eyes to the impact that sections have on members and game. And you know, I thought I knew a little bit about it, but really didn't, which then sort of led to interest in the administrative side and being able to help support not only the section, but where opportunities presented. And here I am now at the head home quarters, you know, in Frisco with the team, PGA of America, supporting and working very closely with our 41 sections, which is remarkable. So just probably enough about me. You know, Nikki mentioned master professional in general management. So that's kind of the track that I went down, but very fortunate to have a little experience in, you know, all four sort of green grass sectors, from public, private, military, and resort, and served in those capacities, right, of like A8 and A1 and A4, A13, A9, and now I'm A11, right, like an administrator in the golf industry, which is a first, but it's been fabulous. So very, very like privileged and honored to be in this role with the team here at home quarters. Love the ability to work closely with sections, and I'll pivot a little bit here to sort of what that role is. So you know, Nikki mentioned I'm the senior director of our member and section operations team here at home quarters. You're familiar with some of our team, and probably likely quite well. I know Junko Harkins on player engagement is your consultant. Serene Blair, Morgan Williamson, I know in our recruitment space, Michael Gainey and Daryl Ficano as the career consultants. I'm sure you're working with them, or many of you are. Ken Farrell, who's obviously a Hall of Famer with the SoCal section. Ken's an incredibly valued member of our team on the executive search space and prior career consulting. And then Mike Ray, who supports Nikki and Caitlin from our section business operations team. So my role is really primarily to lead, to steward, and to make sure that we're continuously improving as a team. The team oversees the recruiting efforts at the national level, the career consultants, player engagement, our executive search space, all of those, you know, growth of the game programs that we run through player engagement. PGA Coach now falls under our player engagement team and has done for several months as we're leaning more sort of heavily into that space. And then the section business operations team, which support our 41 sections as closely as we can so that we can work collaboratively together. We've got 66 teammates on that member section operations team, and a pretty sort of broad range of talent, incredibly so. 51 of our team are PGA of America members. 75% of the team are in territory. They're the field teams that are out there, you know, where you as members live and work. So it's a small number, 25% of us that are here at home quarters that really support that team. 4 of our teammates are prior executive directors, so they have great experience and knowledge around sections and how sections support members where they live and work. 12 prior section staff on the team, and 12 of our staff have served in board capacity at section level. So that's kind of the team and how we're structured. And really, you know, our primary focus is you, the member. I mean, we are here 100% to support you. And so I think, you know, as many of you probably have engaged with our team, I would encourage you, and I will continue to do it. Let us know how we can best help. Reach out, engage your consultants that are in territory. Don't wait till you actually may need them for a life-changing moment, but lean in and get to know them whenever you can, and encourage your peers to do the same. We are literally here to help. And if I kind of prioritized it's making sure that you as members have the skills and the tools and the resources to be the most effective you can be in the jobs that you're in currently, so that you are able to excel and retain those positions for as long as you choose to, And or if you choose to elevate and move on and you're looking for career advancement, let us help you. That's our job to do it. We want you to be as relevant as you can be in your position, continue to skill stack and grow your competencies and your ability to move on in your careers, and hopefully like continue to position you for as long as you're in this industry in the best positions that we can. And then we also lean in heavily with employers and with consumers to make sure that they understand how valuable our members are and how skilled you are, so that you are the first choice when an employer is thinking who should they bring in to run their program, whether it's teaching, coaching, golf ops, general management. Our goal is to make sure that we're positioning you as the member as the first choice. And the same with consumers. When a consumer's thinking, a parent, where should their child take up the game? Where's somebody that is interested in the game, wanting to learn more or engage? It should be the first choice is a PGA of America golf professional. So we have a lot of involvement in making sure that there's an awareness of the value that you bring into those spaces with employers and consumers, and that we engage employers and consumers to make sure we're constantly messaging on your behalf, so that we'll position you the best we can. So that's probably a summary of really, my responsibility is to lead and steward and make sure that our team is always looking at how they can improve, and then making sure we're doing that as closely as we can with sections. So we work very closely with Nikki, Caitlin, and the staffs. And the goal is that between our collective sort of resources that we're engaging the maximum number of you kind of in your space, where you're at, along your career journey, and making sure that we're helping you to be as effective as we possibly can. And Nikki, I think that's kind of an initial sort of talk about where I come from, my background a little bit, and then what we do. And hopefully that's informative to the team. And it's probably a lot of what you know, but it's a really privileged position to be where I'm at, and the team loves doing what they do.
Yeah, we know that, and we enjoy working with your team. I know those that are here in our two sections. We consider them part of our team. They're part of our staff and our team. We work closely, with Junko and Michael and Derek up north. I think it's important to point out that a lot of times, you'll hear PGA members talk about, oh, the PGA this and the PGA that, or they don't do that, they don't do this. Well, we can't forget that the PGA is us. It's the members. It's not some folks up in some big building, in Frisco making decisions. It really is at the ground roots. And you spoke to the importance of sections, and I just want to thank you and the current leadership for really recognizing that, especially the last few years. Really have seen a change. I've worked for the section for a long time. I've spent quite a few years working at the PGA of America, so I've been in this circle for a long time, and I've been able to see some changes. And we are definitely on the right track, and we've made some great changes recently. Specifically recognizing the importance of sections and our members at the grassroots level, because that's really where it's happening. Our members are on the front line. They're talking to golfers, thousands and thousands of golfers on a daily basis, and answering questions. And to your point, and to our members, that's why we're here. We're here to strengthen everyone's career and your knowledge of not just your job, but of the game. We have to be sort of experts and knowledgeable in everything about the game. With the whole golf ball rollback, that's going to be a big deal. It already is very controversial, but we know what direction we're going at this point. But it's really, and I think that's why Derek was so passionate about what he said, and being against this. It's because our members are going to be the ones on the front line answering all the questions from golfers. They're not going to pick up the phone and call the USGA, and I'm not saying anything negative about the USGA. It's just, we can't forget the importance our members play in the day-to-day of this game. So thank you for that, and thank you for recognizing how important sections are.
Yeah, no, I think, Nikki, it's it truly is, and you hear that message too, and the pendulum swings sometimes. Sometimes those relationships are are strong, and the communication is great. And at other times, maybe it goes in the other direction. But, having been here probably, I think it's 15 months, maybe 16 months now, Nikki, and I know that, this audience knows, I mean, as a district, you work closely with Wes, Wes is in that ED chair committee role. We may talk more about that, as we go forward, but that's a critical role to represent all 41 sections. And obviously you work very closely with Wes, Caitlin, yourself too. I'm sure many of the members know, but Wes in his role as the chairman of that ED committee has worked very closely with Scott Wellington and our section business operations team, whose role really is that integration with sections. Wes and I communicate regularly. So I'm experienced with the communication being very good and very active. And I hear from yourself, Caitlin, and your 39, counterparts out there across the sections, that we've got executive directors now represented on all the national committees. You're representing in many subcommittees, even with our team, with member section operations, whether it be, sort of the junior league committee, anything where we're engaging with PGA Reach, business development, just to name a few. But I think that point being made, there is a lot of like routine communication with executive directors and sections. We're working very, very closely together. We actually have an annual meeting with our team, with the member and section operations team, where once a year, the entire team comes here to the home quarters building, and we spend 2 to 3 days together, really sort of strategic planning on, are we doing the right things for our members? Are there things we could be doing differently? How are we collaborating and communicating? How are we prioritizing where we put resources? And this year, for the first time ever, Wes joined us and participated in that. So we sort of had this section perspective inside of our team meeting, and it was great. So I think, to that whole point around how closely we work with sections, whether it be, the communication side as far as what's being done at headquarters, and, making sure that communications go out in the right manner, and that they've been integrated with the sections maybe ahead of time, and then just how we collaborate on those programs and those initiatives that are out there. It's in a really good place. And the feedback that myself and team are hearing from executive directors is very good. The momentum's great right now, and long may it continue. Because again, I think, you made that point. At the end of the day, sections are the delivery mechanism for so much, that comes through the headquarters, maybe resourcing perspective, but none of it is successful without that really, really close collaboration. And, when you ask a member, the members that are on this call, the face of the PGA of America is their section. And that's always the way it is. So we're in a good place now, and I'm happy to be a part of it. But, can't thank sort of Wes in his role as that ED chair for how engaged he's been in that process, and for you, Caitlin, and so many of your peers for leaning in and helping us do it together, because that's the key. It is literally about, the closer we work together, the more impactful everything we do is to our member, which is at the end of the day what we're all here to do anyway. So it's good to be a part of that process.
Thanks, Mike. I have actually kind of going off of that about, what the team does and what's, kind of been new for you guys this year. Can you talk to our members a little bit about the North Stars that we kind of put together last year? Craig Kessler, the COO, who's now moving on, kind of put those in place. And what are those this year? Why are they important to sections? Why are they important to HQ? And what our members need to know about that?
Yeah, it's a great question, Caitlin. And I think sort of the initial intent behind the North Stars, to back up to that, is just to help sort of align from a governance perspective behind those most important priorities that do impact our members, obviously our game, and then there's a business people component to them, right? I think most on the call are familiar with the fact that we have the 4. So it's, the member, the game, the business, and people. But back to the Constitution, it's all about member and game. They're the priorities. So the intent behind it is focus resources on a few significant sort of initiatives, projects that are focused on maximum impact to the membership, maximum impact, to growth of the game, and then really doing so with very focused on good fiscal stewardship around business. And obviously nothing happens without people. So making sure we're taking care of our team, our section teams in how they roll out those programs. Specifically from member and section operations, we've got 3 North Stars that fall into our lane. One is in the member space and 2 are in the game North Star. Our member North Star is a really large project, and we're just now leaning into it from our team's perspective. And it's a member section operation like opportunity assessment, which is kind of a, what does that mean? What's the so what? The so what behind our member project is for us to assess how many positions currently exist in the market as far as the golf industry across like everything that's out there. There's been so much change over the last years, specifically coming out after the pandemic, the amount of off-course kind of growth that's happened. So we're going to work closely with the National Golf Foundation to have a research project to identify what positions are out there right now. So that's kind of one. Then look at our internal data. Where are our members currently employed in those different spaces across all the classifications that we know are active membership? And then like, where are there gaps? Like, where are we seeing evolving gaps in the industry where there's maybe a lot of opportunity for our members to lean into? And then maybe where are there opportunities or there's areas that we are already maybe sort of flooding that market? And how can we, as the national, with our sections, maybe tailor how we recruit, how we do training and development and education, and how we resource to our members to get them into the positions that they aspire to move into. So there's a research project. We're going to overlay that on where our members are currently actively working. And then there's a survey component that's going to roll out, and it's going to take us a little more time to put it together, but to fully understand from membership where our members are at, where do they aspire to be and go, and are we providing members the right tools and resources to achieve their goals? And so there's going to be a very focused survey that'll roll out under this project. And that research component with the member survey data that we get back is going to help us formulate how do we strategically look at how we're recruiting, how we're providing our education programs, and how are we really resourcing our members to put them in the most successful position in their future career goals. So that's one of the North Star projects. That'll roll out over a 12, 18, maybe even a 24-month period, because it is a significant project to undertake and it needs to be done correctly. We're working that very closely with our ED committee and with our employment committee, who are obviously very actively engaged in that topic because it's very much focused around employment. The other 2 projects that we have are more game focused. One is taking all of our growth of the game programs in the junior space and making sure that they're integrated kind of on the national and the section level, so they're easier for our consumers to navigate, as in there's sort of one platform and you can understand when, let's say, a junior golfer first picks up a club all the way to, their sort of like career growth in the game. How do we put that under one umbrella in a system that's more integrated and more user-friendly, so that we can sort of have connectivity to those junior golfers all the way through their development, and it's easy for our consumers to understand how we're doing it, and it's not piecemealed the way it currently is with the systems that they are today. And then the second project is PGA Coach, and I think many of your members on the call are familiar that the PGA Coach is a really hot topic right now within our governance structure. There's a committee structure now that has 4 committees under PGA Coach, looking at the summit, looking at programming, looking at the tech side of the house, and looking at the sort of the media, the storytelling, the amplification. So there's a large committee focus on PGA Coach, and that's going to continue, and that's now within our team under player engagement to move that forward. All of that said, it's to continue to make sure that we shine the light on our PGA of America coaches, and that they are seen as the preeminent coaches in the space, and that consumers, employers understand that we're the best in the business. So it's focused on continued growth in PGA Coach. And so they're the three projects that fall to the member section operations team. But there's multiple other projects that are out there. But again, the short version of the North Stars is focus us as a governance on those key priorities, so that we're not trying to do 100 things relatively well. We're trying to do fewer things as well as we can. How does it relate to sections? Some of it will, and some of it doesn't. But the process of North Stars is really no different from a strategic plan. All sections should have a strategic plan. And if a section's strategic plan focuses on member, game, business, and people, then if our projects, maybe at the national level, fit in very, very well with a section's strategic plan, then use them, ladder up underneath them, and maybe have something very similar within your strategic plan. But if there's things that are more tailored to the section member needs, obviously that's fine too. But the intent is kind of have a few good projects that are strategic, long-term, that benefit the members and our growth of the game initiatives, versus maybe spreading ourselves too thin, trying to do too many things at one time, which is never usually a good thing to do. Hopefully that helps, Kaylin.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, Mike. And so much work being done. Yeah, congrats on all of that. It's pretty amazing. And specifically for NorCal, I was pretty inspired by the North Stars last year. And when I started as ED, we've actually kind of adopted the North Stars with our section board as well as our committee structure, and really push the committees to kind of come up with some goals for the year and streamline it. It's like, hey, we have all these great ideas, but let's really come up with 3 or 4 tangible things we can actually get done this year. And I will say here in NorCal, we've definitely seen some great success with that. So it obviously works, which is great. So but yeah, another question here for you from me, and then I think we'll probably do some fun ones, Mike. But obviously you're a born leader, you're a natural born leader. You've been in a lot of leadership positions throughout your life with, the Colorado section, all the different roles that you've held. Can you maybe talk about, how what you've learned becoming a leader? How have you continued to have your leadership skills get better? What's helped you become a better leader, and how are you continuing to work on that? Because there's a lot of section members in both of our sections that are, getting on committees, getting on section boards, and trying to be leaders of their facility. But what advice would you give them as, they're in a leadership type of role?
Yeah, that's a broad topic, Caitlin, but a great one, right? So like me personally, for what it's worth, it's lifelong, right? So as you lean into that leadership role, sometimes you haven't chosen it. Some of us do, but ultimately, the longer you sort of stay in this career field, the more you're likely to end up being a leader. For me personally, it's sort of surrounding yourself by those trusted sources of truth, mentors, right? Which we all have, and that could be a family member, a friend, it could be a peer, it could be somebody you're working for or with, and then just sort of formulating your own style. Having spent a lot of time within the Department of Defense, as in everything that the military does, there's usually a pretty standard like sort of operating procedure and protocol around it. And for me, it was sort of broke down into sort of those attributes that you've all got to sort of formulate yourself. But the large majority is based on character, right? Standing behind the values that you have, which are typically life learned from when you were a child. Your family environment sort of will influence that. And then every opportunity you have does it. But make sure that you've got firm values, kind of beliefs, behaviors that are sort of inculcated, and that you stand behind them. I would say sort of to the values piece, your character and how you're perceived is more important than your resume. What you do when nobody's looking is probably more important than what you do when the spotlight's shined on you. So maintain that sort of integrity and that strong values. Don't compromise on your ethics. So sort of character is one, because if you're showing character, and you can do it throughout your career, and you can do it under pressure, you're going to build trust. And trust is kind of foundational to being a good leader. And trust is earned, based on what you do, your actions, not just your words. Words often can be cheap. So sort of pay attention to everything you do on in every instance that you're in. Maintain a presence, maintain a presence wherever you're at, so that you can be accessed by anybody that's within that circle of influence that you have as a leader. Know your team well, like very much so, personal, career aspirations, and then sort of develop that situational approach to it. Every situation's different. I mean, leadership style, as you sort of grow into that space, has to adapt to every single unique environment that you're in. Sometimes if it's a life, health, safety issue, you have to make a quick decision, and you have to make it based on having a limited amount of information, but it has to be done immediately. Other times you have the ability to be very, very collaborative. So sort of develop a situational leadership skill set, because it needs to change based on the audience and based on the urgency. Maintain your skill set, which is sort of like your intellect. How do you receive information, process information, make decisions? Like stay up on your game, stay relevant, always learn, always lean in. You should never think that you're better than or know more than anybody else, because everything advances as fast as you can. So I think attributes, it's the character, it's your presence as a leader, and your accessibility and knowing your team, and then it's maintaining your skill set, your knowledge base, so that you're relevant and that you're always learning. And that you, in my mind, again, this is maybe my 2 cents, but in our industry, we're here to serve. So we should be servant leaders, right? Everything that we do should be focused on others, not self. And I think that goes into governance in a very, very strong manner within the PGA of America. If you're in those roles for self-service and self-interest, maybe rethink why you're there. But if you're looking out for others, and everything you do and those decisions that you make as a leader are focused on what benefits your team, or what benefits the mission, the higher purpose, then you're in it for the right reasons. So character, presence, intellect, and then I think you got to focus on the competencies as a leader of making sure that you're building trust every day. You're setting the right example. You're communicating like often, and that you're very engaged with your team and mission, and that you're extending influence through that. You spend a lot of time, how do you develop those around you? Because as a leader, that's your goal. You want to build the bench. You want everybody that you're responsible for to ultimately be you, or take your role, or move in ideal situations above and beyond you. So make sure you're looking at how do you develop the team around you, obviously being a good steward of those resources, so that you're using them wisely, and you've got to achieve the results. So you got to be able to understand the environment, adapt, overcome, keep the team motivated, and drive results. So yeah, that's probably enough, Caitlin, there. But it's lifelong. It's incredibly important. If you're a leader, whether you chose to be one or not, your responsibility is incredibly important to take seriously. And I would just say, always make sure you're focusing on others versus self.
That's great. Thanks, Mike. I think Nikki had a question here real quick too, but thanks for that, Mike. It's awesome.
Yeah, that was great. Thanks, Mike. You said you'd been in this role. I mean, we're approaching 1.5 years, so very different than your, previous positions in your career. But is it really, talking about developing a team and leadership? Has there been anything, number one, is there anything that you miss from, sort of traditional green grass positions? And, what are the similarities or differences, and that you've seen in the last 1.5 years almost?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, Nikki. So there's an awful lot of similarities, right? Like
Yeah.
Once you kind of evolve into a leadership role, whatever the team, whatever the environment, those basic kind of foundational things, your attributes, your competencies, they don't change. They just have to, kind of evolve into the environment. So a lot of similarities, right? That's probably the simple answer to that. Missing the green grass 100%, because you're closer to it, right? You're literally typically playing more, and you're closer to the action. I think that's the big change. And as you sort of progressively move through leadership positions, one of those hardest sort of changes is that you're not like seeing a direct result of talking to a member or or a player or a junior or a parent, you now get into this role that's, you're kind of in an office more so. You're dealing with people, finance, administration, which is hard, but it's really important because you can have a bigger like influence as you move into those roles. So you miss the direct impact. I always enjoyed being kind of the grassroots, whether it was green grass operations or whether even in the Department of Defense, it was at an installation, actually talking to service members and their families, or talking to the players and the members at the club. And so that headquarters perspective for me was never something I aspired to do. And governance was never something I aspired to do because I love being in the grassroots. But at some point, as you kind of move and grow, and again, I had to make that decision, is it time to sort of lean in and step up and be part of the solution? So if it's easy to say, the governance isn't doing the right thing, or the leadership of the club's not doing the right thing, or, PGA of America is not, thinking about the little guy, the little gal, well then, get involved, put your hand up, go be a part of that team and bring the sort of grassroots level into those headquarter positions and have a greater influence. So I miss the direct contact, but love the fact that our sort of influence out through the sections and with the team is broader, and eventually it's going to impact those members, players at the grassroots level on a kind of a broader scale. But it's not for everybody, and I sort of stayed away from it for probably 25 years of my career. Nikki.
That's great. Thank you. All right, Caitlin, how about some rapid fire?
Yep, let's do it. We're at that time. So, Mike, you've gone through the 40 minutes. Now you get some fun ones. So, we'll toss it over to you. First one is, what is your favorite club in your bag?
Yeah. Okay. Pause. Think. It's an old wedge that's been in there actually since my days in Northern Cal. So it's a Bullet Invincible 2 pitching wedge that has just stayed in the bag forever because it's got the best, cleanest square line, the sharpest front edge, and it's my go-to to get out of trouble, to do the little kind of bump and runs around the green. It's probably that Invincible 2, like era 1991 Bullet Invincible wedge.
That's awesome. I love it. Perfect. All right. So then where are you using that club? What's your favorite golf course? And keep in mind, we're both in Cali. So
yeah, favorite course is the one, when we got on the call earlier on, it was like, where have you had a hole in one, or where's your favorite memory? My father passed away earlier this year, and he and I played a lot of golf in England. I grew up there. There's a little 9-hole club called Royal Wellington in Newmarket. And it's a 9-hole, but it's a really famous course in Europe, considered like this sacred 9, established in like 1883. I had a hole in one there with my dad. It was my first one. And that's just, I worked there in the summer holidays. Cambridge University, that's where their golf team plays. It's got memories from when I was a kid. My dad, a hole in one. That's kind of the go-to favorite course.
that's awesome. It's so funny how we do this with all of our speakers for the most part, and almost all of them come up with like either a 9-hole facility that they have memories with their families at, or, it's cool to see that golf is so much about the relationships and who you spend that time with on the course. So very neat. Which leads us to our last one. What is your dream foursome?
Yeah, had that one before. That changes over the years, by the way, right? Always used to be my kids and the family, and now my dad's in it front and foremost, right? Obviously, no doubt there. Tiger Woods, just because, right? That he's got to be in that group. And then for me, an unusual one maybe for some of the team, I think is Mo Norman. I spent a little time around Mo Norman. I don't know how many people are familiar with Mo, but probably considered one of the best ball strikers in the history of the game. And I met him a couple times. Bigger than that for me was having a conversation with him was off the charts. Some of his like perspectives on the game of golf. So my dad's personality and character with Tiger Woods and Mo Norman, and me sitting back and listening to that conversation and watching that dynamic, that's probably the dream the dream foursome this point in time.
I love it. That sounds like a blast. Nice, Mike. Very cool. Well, that's awesome. Well, thanks again for being here with us, Mike. It's a pleasure to obviously have gotten to know you over the last, like you said, 15 months, and we're really honored to have you working at PGA on our behalf. Thank you for everything you do for our sections and for our members, and it definitely it doesn't go unnoticed. So please keep up the great work, and thanks for being here today. It means a lot.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Caitlin.
Caitlin. All right, so we'll transition. Mike, hope you can stay on with us. But we'll transition to Mr. Kessler. Craig, you officially have 14 minutes because we need a little time to close. So can you do it?
I think so.
I think so too.
I'll give it my best.
Share with us what's going on.
Okay, well, today is halftime in the California legislative session in 2025. What that means is today is the last day for any bill that originated either in the Assembly or the Senate to get off the floor and to the other body. It's also the time when the legislature and the governor, who would appear to be in their usual battle, are trying to finalize a budget deal, probably no later than the 27th of this month. I know we voted some years ago to require that budget be put in by the 15th or they don't get paid, but they found a way to kind of delay that. And there was something called budget trailer bills that I'll discuss because they're one that's very significant that allows them to really extend that process and still get paid, get paid their salaries. So at the halftime, I'm going to talk about those bills we supported in this session as an industry, those we're watching and why we're watching them, and then the one very significant bill that we opposed. And I'd have to say the news is good. So that we supported more than these following three bills, but these are the three that were probably had the most importance to golf. The first one was a very simple correction of a requirement that goes in 2027 that all junior golf programs, all minority, not just junior golf programs, but all programs that deal with youth, have on tap an automated electronic defibrillator and someone authorized, trained to use it. The original piece of legislation required a medical professional, otherwise known as an EMT or a physician, to administer it. This bill, Assembly Bill 310, which has made it over to the Senate, I would have to say it's going to make it to the governor's office and be signed, simply requires that whether it's PGA Junior League or a First Tee program, that there be a coach trained to use these. And they're kind of idiot-proof, and golf courses have been using them for many, many years. A second bill that expedites the hookups of recycled water and its availability has already made it out of the Senate over to the Assembly. That was, again, a very easy one to support. And this is an interesting one because it didn't really originally reach our radar screens, but the author reached out to the California Alliance for Golf and sought our support. And of course, we very readily gave it. The third one, which is Senate Bill 72, puts for the first time in the history of California water supply targets and ups it by 9 million acre-feet, which represents the amount that's predicted to be lost to aridification between now and 2050. It's the identical bill that we supported last year that made it through the Senate, made it through the Assembly, and then was vetoed by the governor because it wasn't in the budget. And before you stop laughing, we didn't feel he vetoed it for that reason. We feel that he vetoed it for political reasons. He's pressing the Delta Conveyance Plan, which I'll get to in a moment because he's pressing it a lot harder this year. And he's pushing to complete the Sites Reservoir. Both of those are opposed by the environmental community. And it's sort of how much opposition to the environmental community can you expect a Democratic governor of the state of California to do? So we're hopeful that he will sign it this year because the bill contained budget authorization. And that's important because there are 81, or make that 80 now, that Congress acted yesterday, targets on California, very specific things dealing with decarbonization and various other things, electrifying the grid. And there's none for water. And what could be more important to the future of the state of California, and particularly to the golf sector, than water? So we remain hopeful. The two things we're watching, one has to do with a Senate bill that did make it out of the Senate, only with 23 votes, and it made it out with 2 Democrats opposing, another Democrat staying off, and that's an indicator that it may be in trouble when it gets to the Assembly. Its author claims that it would resurrect the Biden waters of the United States rules and apply them to California, waters of California. And some of the detractors, and I would agree with some of those detractions, pointed out that it exceeded his claims. We've been we stayed off of it, merely watching it to see where it goes. And my guess is in the Assembly, it'll probably be fully amended to take out some of those concerns that we had. The primary one is that it created a private right of action. That's a term of art, which means that anyone can file a lawsuit and not just simply certain designated parties and not just a state regulatory agency. The other thing we're watching is an Assembly bill by Assemblymember Buffy Wicks of Oakland that puts up, I won't call them significant reforms to the California Environmental Quality Act, but expedites some of those things. We're watching it. It's a double-edged sword. It would probably strike many listening to this as a move in the right direction to cut through some of the red tape that causes this state to have difficulty building anything. And part of those anythings are the water infrastructure that we desperately need. On the other hand, it also cuts through housing red tape. And we know that anyone who's been listening to this knows that when it comes to golf, there are sectors, builders, realtors that kind of look at our golf courses more as prey than a species to be preserved. Let's just simply put it as bluntly as that. So we're watching both of those things, not so much because we're involved, it's way above our pay grade or our influence, but because of what it tells us that where the direction of the politics are going in the state. And that's important for us to understand on those things where we get involved. I want to point out the California Alliance for Golf tries to avoid being a Me Too industry. For example, on Senate Bill 601, the WOTUS bill, there are probably hundreds of supporters and detractors on that sort of thing. We don't make any difference. But what it tells us about those things that do affect us very specifically, and I could just mention a few from recent years, whether it's the exception that allows PGA pros to continue to work as independent contractors, whether it was those 2 runs of the Public Golf Endangerment Act, whether it was last year's bill that would have prohibited the use of all fertilizers and pesticides in the California coastal zone. Those are things that were directly aimed at us. And if we didn't step up, no one else was going to step up, whether it's support or defeat. Now, the one bill we opposed this year, we expected to have company with us on that, and we didn't, which is something we need to look at in the future because I expect this to come back. And that was a bill that would have taken California from what we do right now, which is flip our clocks. We have 8 months of daylight saving time and 4 months of standard time, something that 47 of our other states do and join us. And it would take us to full-time standard time. This would be a major, not only a financial blow to the golf industry in California, and where it would particularly impact would be that squeeze that happens predominantly at the busiest courses in the state, in the urban areas, where the high schools during certain bridge months and the junior programs need to operate because kids go to school. And it would sort of eliminate an additional hour of full-paying adults. They'd all squeeze together. And it's a pretty good idea of what would give when you're talking about the bottom line. So even though I would have to say there are sectors more affected than golf, we fought this one pretty much alone. Happy to report that while it did make it out of its policy committee of reference in the state Senate, barely, just before that committee adjourned after 9 o'clock in the evening, but it failed in appropriations, which we kind of expected. I do expect it to come back because this is an organized national movement that claims that standard time is healthier for reasons that I find absurd. Flipping the clocks, they have very real evidence. Until such time as Congress does something to enable more flexibility, that would be the only option to not doing it. I mentioned a little bit that we're in the budget season, and Governor Newsom has proposed and is pushing very hard, as are a number of water agencies in the state, to put into this year's budget some, I won't call them shortcuts, that's what environmentalists call them, I'll simply say expediting the construction of the Delta conveyance plan, the single tunnel plan. For those of you who go back as far as I do, this is 45 years old when Jerry Brown, in his second term of his first run as governor, proposed something called a peripheral canal. It was a two-tunnel solution. And over the years, and all it does is restore the ability to tap to really it's a connector to the state water project upon which the central part of the state and the southern part of the state depends on its reliability for its water sources. So while this is a and the trailer bill's in trouble because the budget committees of both the Assembly and the Senate, partly because of probably a separation of powers issue, have left it out of their budgets, but we believe the governor is going to continue to press it, and so are a lot of water districts. There's a difference between, I think this was condemned to probably failing when the Legislative Administrative Office, which is bipartisan and down the middle, pointed out that that in essence made the case that process in this case would be substance. And while they took no position on the substance, and while the golf industry has been very warm to the substance of the proposal, these sort of procedural obviations were opposed by 15 members of the state legislature in the Northern California, and the California Alliance for, if it were the Southern California Alliance for Golf, probably would have weighed in favor, but it's the California Alliance for Golf, and in deference to the fact that it's very, very controversial. This is something that kept Aqua off of the bill as well. We're standing and looking at it. When the substance comes up, that may change it, but for right now, that would be the where we stand. I'm gonna cut out one thing in order to get us out on time. So I'm going to conclude by suggesting something. I listened very carefully to Mike O'Donnell, who, by the way, is very eloquent. Mike, if you're still on, that's a compliment. You're very eloquent, good spokesperson, and I appreciated everything you said. One thing, again, Nikki, you'll understand this a little bit better, and I'll try to convey it to a fuller audience. So I see a straight through line. I know you see it because of the conversation we had yesterday at 4 p.m. between that first North Star that Mike talked about, surveying to find out those business opportunities for golf professionals. I'd say the same thing for anyone who works in the golf industry. And it strikes me that our conversation yesterday was about and this is just in a long line of facilities that are on the chopping block. There are golf facilities, one of them quite viable and successful. And that's been the history of urban United States. I read an item earlier this morning that Massachusetts, despite the fact that similar to California, the demand's never been higher, but the trend of golf courses closing continues notwithstanding. That is a direct through line. If you are a golf professional and the PGA is surveying these things, there is a visceral and straight through line and connection between the whole notion of governmental advocacy or advocacy in general and that conclusion as to how many jobs are available. I know that the SCGA's Director of Public or Governmental Affairs, Kevin Fitzgerald, often claims that you can go through all the AB 310s and the SB 72s and all the technical mumbo jumbo and all the legal terms of art that we both use and go over everyone's head. The bottom line is his North Star is if 5 or 7 years from now, instead of 460 golf courses in Southern California, if there are 400, he has failed. It doesn't matter how many bills you defeat. It doesn't matter how many bills you support. Doesn't matter what goes. So there is a direct connection. And my conclusion to the chair of the co-chair of the PGA of America's Advocacy Committee is that to start a conversation on how so many things that I listened to on these webinars, and I heard Mike O'Donnell today, where you're beginning to build an infrastructure that puts the sections where the rubber really meets the road in terms of these. You put it together on so many different fronts, doing it for the advocacy area. It may be difficult. Nonetheless, it's something, and it will take a long time to construct. And there's no time like the present to begin it. So that may be the next email you get from me before our meeting on the 25th. I am now going to sign off with a minute to go, having foregone one of those issues we talked about yesterday, and simply leave you that at halftime, my conclusion on this year's legislative session for the golf industry, probably our most successful one in 5 or 6 years. So with that, I turn it over with 30 seconds to spare. Mark that down and don't forget it. Thank you.
Thanks, Craig.
Oh man, always great, Craig. We appreciate the updates and the getting us right on time. So we're grateful for today. It was an awesome chat. Thank you all for being here. Just a couple housekeeping reminders. So today's PDR credit that will be recorded today, we'll post those today. But they may not show up on your account till next week. So we are going to submit them, but don't worry, it will be still considered for this cycle. But we want to make sure that you guys know about that. If you have called in, please let your section office know, because we can't see based on the number. We can only see your phone number. So please let your section office know you're here. And then a big update for next month's call on July 18th. We're going to have Mike Sweeney from the USGA. So I'm sure that'll be a great topic and lots of questions for Mike. So we'll definitely see you all July 18th. And Nikki, do you have anything else before we close out?
I think we're good. Just wish all the fathers a happy Father's Day and enjoy US Open week. And we'll see you all next month. Thank you.
Awesome. Take care.